Lesson 11. American Government, State and Local Government. This lesson explains the structure and function of state and local governments in the United States. The U.S. Constitution sets up a federal system of government. This type of government has a central government at the top and state governments below. By creating a broader government, federalism encourages experimentation and keeps the government close to the people. The national and state governments share some powers such as establishing courts, making laws, and collecting taxes. Other powers belong to only one government or the other. Under the Constitution, some powers granted to the federal government are the ability to print money, create an army, declare war, and make treaties with other countries. Question 41. Under our Constitution, some powers belong to the federal government. What is one power of the federal government? Some powers that belong to the federal government are the powers to print money, declare war, create an army, and make treaties. To protect states' rights and individual rights, the 10th Amendment to the Constitution states that any powers not given to the federal government belong to the states. Some state powers are to provide schooling, education, protection, and safety. Protection means police, and safety means fire departments. States also give driver's licenses and approve zoning and land use. Zoning and land use means the government decides what types of buildings you can build and how you may use them. Question 42. Under our Constitution, some powers belong to the states. What is one power of the states? According to the Constitution, some of the powers that belong to states are providing schooling, education, protection and safety, giving driver's licenses, and approving zoning and land use. The United States has 3 levels of government: federal, state, and local. The federal government is the government in Washington, D.C. It deals with foreign governments and national issues, creates all federal laws, and upholds the Constitution. In this way, what the federal government does affects all 50 states. Below the federal government are the 50 individual state governments. State governments have many of the same powers and responsibilities as the federal government. However, the power of a state government is limited to that state. Each state government also has many local governments below it. The U.S. Constitution sets up the federal government and protects the basic rights of all Americans. Every state also has their own constitution that does the same things. While there are many differences between state constitutions and governments, every state government has the same 3 branches as the federal government: a legislative, executive, and judicial. In every state except Nebraska, the legislative branch consists of a House of Representatives and Senate. Nebraska only has one House of Congress. In Connecticut, the legislature is also called the General Assembly. Like the U.S. Congress, the function of the General Assembly is to make state laws. Connecticut's General Assembly has 36 senators and 151 representatives. All the senators and representatives represent a district that covers all or part of one or more towns. Districts are created so they contain roughly an equal number of citizens. Connecticut senators and representatives all serve 2-year terms with no term limit. Connecticut's executive branch consists of the governor and 5 other elected executive officers. The job of the state executive is to carry out and enforce the state laws. The governor is the head of the state government and the leader of the executive branch. As the head of the executive, a governor sets state policy, proposes legislation to the General Assembly, and commands the state's National Guard. Like a president, governors sign bills into law and have veto power. In Connecticut, the governor also has a line-item veto, which allows the governor to reject parts of a bill without vetoing it all. In 48 states, including Connecticut, governors serve 4-year terms. In Vermont and New Hampshire, they serve 2-year terms. Connecticut is also one of 14 states that have no term limit for governors. In addition to the governor, the executive branch in Connecticut includes a lieutenant governor, treasurer, secretary of state, comptroller, and attorney general. The lieutenant governor is like the vice president. He or she is president of the Senate and becomes governor should the governor no longer be able to serve. The treasurer is like a banker and in charge of the state treasury. He or she manages all the money the state receives and spends. The comptroller is like an accountant and writes financial reports and oversees the state's accounting. The Secretary of State is in charge of all public records. The Attorney General is the state's chief legal advisor and the chief law enforcement officer. Like the president and vice president, the governor and lieutenant governor are elected together. However, in Connecticut, members of the executive are not appointed but elected separately. All members of the executive serve 4-year terms, like the governor. The judicial branch is the state court system. State courts are independent from federal courts, although the two systems sometimes interact. Like the federal court system, each state court system has a highest court. In every state except New York and Maryland, this is the state Supreme Court. If serious enough, a case may move from the state's highest court to the U.S. Supreme Court. Below the top court are a series of lower courts. Appellate courts are courts of appeal, and superior courts hear most serious and trial cases. In addition to the superior courts, there are several special courts that deal with minor cases in more specific areas such as juvenile crime, family matters, and traffic violations. Connecticut's highest court is the Connecticut Supreme Court. The court has 7 justices, including 1 Chief Justice. Justices are appointed by the governor and approved by the General Assembly. There is no term limit, but justices must retire when they turn 70. The 2 major political parties in the United States are the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. Since 1857, only 1 Connecticut governor has not belonged to the Democratic Party or Republican Party. For most of its history, the United States has had 2 major political parties, although the parties and policies have differed over time. Third parties are usually more successful in local elections, but very important in bringing new ideas into national politics. Women's voting rights, child labor laws, the 40-hour work week, and Social Security are all ideas originally promoted by third parties. Currently, the largest third parties in the U.S. are the Libertarian Party, Green Party, and Constitution Party. The Libertarian Party believes in very limited federal government. The most radical form would be a government that only provides police, prisons, courts, and a military. The Green Party promotes grassroots democracy, social justice, nonviolence, and environmentalism. The Constitution Party wants greater power given to the states and a federal government guided by a strict interpretation of the Constitution. Question 45. What are the 2 major political parties in the United States? The 2 major political parties in the United States are the Democratic and Republican parties. The elephant is the symbol of the Republican Party, and the donkey represents the Democratic Party. In 2010, Dannel Malloy was elected Connecticut's new governor. He is Connecticut's first Democratic governor in 20 years. Before he was governor, Malloy was the mayor of Stamford. The lieutenant governor is Nancy Wyman. She is also a Democrat and was comptroller for 16 years before being elected lieutenant governor. Question 43. Who is the governor of your state now? Dannel Malloy. The governor of Connecticut is Dannel Malloy. Hartford is the capital of Connecticut, but Connecticut originally had two capitals, Hartford and New Haven. Every 2 years the government moved from one city to the other. As Connecticut and its government grew, however, this arrangement became too inefficient. In 1873, a referendum was held to choose which city would become the state's only capital. Hartford won, and in 1879, a new state capitol building was completed. Question 44. What is the capital of your state? The capital of Connecticut is Hartford. This is a picture of Main Street in downtown Hartford. Under each state government are local governments. The structure and function of a local government varies depending upon the state. However, local governments have many of the same powers as the federal and state government, such as the power to create laws and collect taxes. More importantly, they also provide services like police and fire departments, garbage collection, street lighting and maintenance, and building code enforcement. Connecticut, like other states in New England, does not have county governments. Instead, government is based on cities, towns, and boroughs. Cities and towns are equal under state law, while a borough is part of a town and therefore not fully independent. In Connecticut, cities are governed by a mayor and city council. Towns are run by either a mayor, first selectman, or town manager, plus some form of council. In the majority of Connecticut towns, legislative work is conducted through a town meeting. This is a form of direct democracy which allows citizens to directly express their views and vote on proposals. Most town governments have 4-year terms. The mayor of Hartford is Pedro Segarra. He is a Democrat and was elected in 2010.